Hi everyone, it's Ian Spears here, also known as the Wizard of Wine occasionally. Welcome to episode 3 of The King and the Wizard Talk About Cheese and Wine, our favourite subjects. I think we've got a bit of a treat for you today. On the wine front, we're heading to the Rhone, one white, one red. Something a little bit unusual, both of those, and we'll get to that in a minute. So I'll hand over to my colleague, the King of Cheese. Stephen, what are we doing today?
So we have got 4 different cheeses that we're going to try with the 2 wines that you suggested. You put the wine suggestions to me, and I've dug out. This time we've got 2 British cheeses, and we've got 2 French cheeses to throw in the mix as well. So I'll be really excited to see how these pair up and where they go to.
Great. Right. We'll start off with just to explain the wines. So white wine is Saint-Peray. So this one, 2016, made by a winemaker called Maison Tardieu, who bizarrely puts the name of the bottler on the label as well, Tardieu Laurent. So Laurent is the bottler, but he's magnanimous in his view that the bottler plays a huge part in making sure the wine arrives as a quality product and insists on putting him on the label. Now this wine is from the Northern Rhone, and it's from the most southern commune in the Northern Rhone, if that makes sense. So it's immediately below Cornas, and it's a blend primarily of Marsanne and Roussanne. And if you were to think about a wine, a dry wine anyway, that could be pretty far away from things like Pinot Grigio, this is probably getting there. It's Pinot Grigio, you think of that, it's just citrus fruit and acidity, and it's light, acidic, fresh. This wine is going to be full. It's going to be really soft and have, although the lemon and flavors are there are going to be far more flavors of sort of apricot coming through as well. It's going to be a very different wine.
I'm getting some of that on the aroma as well.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it doesn't smell, Pinot Grigio doesn't tend to smell of a great deal. You smell of lemon. This one does not. It smells, there's a lot going on. There are several other fruits there, lots of soft, stony fruits, apricots, peaches, and so on. It smells like there may be a little bit of oak in it as well, which you're never going to have on Pinot Grigio. And the color is a lot darker than you'd expect for when you were comparing it to a light wine. But I think when you taste it, that's going to be the biggest difference. It feels soft. The mouthfeel is going to be soft. There's not a huge amount of acid in there. It's medium acidity.
Yeah, that's really, like I say, it's soft, it's gentle. When you said a million miles away from Pinot Grigio, you had my attention straight away, because I've had some nice Pinot Grigio, but it's just a bit too anodyne for my taste, whereas this has got lots going on. Yeah,
I mean, just tasting that now, it feels heavy on your palate. It feels like a big wine compared to some of those lighter, fresher wines that are fashionable. I get hit with a big bucket of apricots initially when I taste that.
Yeah, and then more apricot, that's true.
Yeah, and then more flavors come through afterwards. You do get a little bit of green fruit coming through around the edge, a little bit of apple and pear. There's still citrus fruit there. There's still acidity there, but there is that some additional flavors from that touch of oak that's in there. A few vanilla-y elements. It's not overpowering, but just a little bit in there. And I suspect there is a touch of malolactic fermentation going on there. There's a little bit of creaminess that adds to that softness of flavor.
Remind me about the fermentation. Is that where they leave it on the leaves for a little bit of extra time?
No, malolactic fermentation is that it's also called malolactic conversion. So it's when a bacteria gets into the wine and it converts the acid, so the malic acid that comes out of the grape, it converts that into lactic acid. So you start to you change the flavor from the apples a little bit towards dairy, and that's gives you a little bit of creaminess.
Right, yeah, that's right.
So wine number 2 is the same winemaker. So it's Tardieu, or badged up as Tardieu Laurent.
Yeah.
And this wine is a Rasteau. So it's from the southern Rhone. It's quite close to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. It neighbours directly with Gigondas. And coming from the southern Rhone, it's going to be a blend of grapes. You know, this is a Côte du Rhône cru, which is really what Châteauneuf-du-Pape is as well. There are 17 crus in Rhone, 9 of them in the southern Rhone, Châteauneuf being the most famous. And reason for bringing this along, this is to be, you can kind of think of it as a good value alternative to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. It's going to have the same blend of grapes in it, Grenache dominant, but as it's not so well known, you know, the prices are better. One key difference though, is Grenache does show the soil that it's grown on, the terroir that it comes from quite markedly. And Châteauneuf-du-Pape is famous for these big boulders lying in the vineyard all around the bottom of the vines, which soak up the heat during the day and release it in the evening and help the grapes to ripen. Rasteau doesn't have that. Rasteau is clay soils. So it's out in southern Rhone where the valley opens out, and there is an awful lot of flat clay there, and that's where Rasteau comes from. So it does have a slightly different taste. It's a little bit softer. And also because it doesn't have those stones, it needs a warm vintage in order to ripen fully and give its best. But again, this wine, from this winemaker, it's one I buy every year and enjoy. I had the pleasure of meeting the winemaker. I went to a dinner he hosted. He's a really interesting character. You know, I'd fallen in love with his wines before that, and wanted to see and meet him. And he's a real student of winemaking. He's read so many books on winemaking, but a lot of them are old books. And he makes his wines in according to those old methods. So modern winemaking, people are trying to get the grapes to ripen as quickly as possible. They're taking the grapes off the vine as quickly as possible, either mechanically or by hand, separating them from the stalks and getting the wine made before there's any risk of anything happening late season that could damage the grapes. This guy, you know, he read loads of books on making wine, which showed that in the Rhone, historically, people would leave the grapes on until October even. And then they would take them off in bunches and press them on the bunch with the stalks. And so that's how he makes his wine, which gives his wines a little bit more, they tend to be a little bigger, a little fuller than some of his peers, but also have a little bit more structure. They get a touch more tannin out of those stalks that go into the fermentation vat. So let's see.
Lovely colour as well. I mean, yeah, I guess you're going to get all that extra complexity from, as you say, from keeping all of the stalks and the bunches there. Yeah,
and so it's quite, compared to a normal Southern Rhone wine, it's a little bit darker than normal, but that could be the blend. And you know, there's a huge variety of grapes that could be in a Southern Rhone wine. I think it's up to 21 that are used. So I'm not even going to guess that what's in here overall. Dominant. Nice big flavour. You can smell the Grenache in it. That's the sort of candied strawberry that comes through. Bit of cherry as well. But there's going to be all sorts of other things in there. I'm going to guess that there's going to be things like Mourvedre in there, probably Roussanne. There'll be some white wines thrown in as well, potentially a little bit of Syrah, all sorts. And I think that gives the winemaker a little bit of an advantage as well, similar to what happens in Bordeaux, but more so in that you can vary the blend year on year to try and make sure you make a good wine. And that's why this wine is one, you know, we've got to know it, we love it, we go back and buy it every year to enjoy.
And do you find there's much variation year on year, or is that the skill of a winemaker in adjusting that blend every season to get to a consistent, recognizable flavor?
There's definitely variation year to year, but the variation is slightly different to say, you know, somewhere like Burgundy, where you've got a single grape Pinot Noir, and the variation, what you're tasting is the variation in the vintage. So hot year is going to taste very different to a cool year.
Of course, yeah.
Whereas here, what tends to happen is you start to see the variation in the blend that they've used in order to try and make the wine that they want to make. So although, you know, one year will be a hot year and one year will be a cool year, there will be a variation in that taste to some degree, given the balance that's in there. And you might start to spot that, oh, there's more Grenache this year than last year. But, you know, I think that's part of the fun in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's an element of trusting the winemaker to make a good wine. So smelling that, I think I mentioned there's some good red fruit in there, a little bit of black as well, black fruit coming through. Quite a lot of black cherry for me. So tasting that, I would put that as, you know, medium acidity, medium to high acidity, medium tannins as well. And then lovely bags of lovely rich fruit coming through, red and black. You know, that, as you'd expect, there's a real mix of grapes in there that's going to give you a little bit of everything. Not so much Syrah, I don't think. I'm not tasting so much spice or mint coming through, but just a beautiful, fruity, full-bodied or medium to full-bodied wine. But again, soft in the same way as the Saint-Peray, as the whites. You know, not so much acid and not so much tannin in there. Yeah. Just a good, well-structured, fruity wine to enjoy.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think well-structured is a really good summary for that red. It's very, very nice indeed. Interested to go at these with some cheeses. So
yeah,
just kind of broadly speaking, we got what have we got? We got a soft, we got 2 hard cheeses and a blue. So the soft cheese we've got, which is called Evenlode, which is an English cheese from Kingstone Dairy in Oxfordshire, made by a guy called Dave Jowett, who I think we had one of his other cheeses last time. I think we had the roll right or the
that's right.
Yeah. So that was the first cheese he started making. This is his second cheese, which is kind of a little bit more. It's a washed rind, washed in brine, which encourages that lovely orangey rind there that you just showed to the camera. So this is kind of, it's not quite as pungent, but it's kind of heading in the direction of like a sort of an Etivaz style cheese made of cow's milk.
Yeah.
It won Best New Cheese at the Artisan Cheese Awards in 2019. And in terms of flavors, and you got to have a strong aroma, you're going to get these kind of peanutty flavors off the flavor. It's sort of savory, meaty, all the things you'd expect with a brine washed cheese. So good. I'd be really interested to see how this pairs up. So shall we jump in with that one?
Let's do that. And this one, I opened up. I got the cheeses out of the fridge a couple of ago, just to make sure they'd had a good chance to warm up.
Yeah.
And this one, when I picked it up in its packet, you know, if I'd have been a little bit heavy-handed with it, I think it would have just been squished all over the place. So there we go. That's having a good.
That's got a lovely ooziness to it, yeah. And you've got that little bit of structure around the rind, but. We recently brought this cheese back onto the counter at the shop because we'd had it for a while, and then we sort of rotate things around. Full enough, but we just brought it back on, and I'd forgotten quite how good a cheese it is. It's just got the roll right is beautiful, but this has just got that extra level of as I say, sort of meatiness and nuttiness about it.
Oh yes. It's just got a slight touch of that ammonia and finish, just a slight touch. I can taste the saltiness in the rind coming through. It was almost like salted peanuts.
That was the first time I tried that cheese. I was like, oh my gosh, is it wrong to say that I'm getting salted peanuts coming through? But everyone else has tried it has said a similar thing, and it's just wonderful flavor.
Yeah, gorgeous color. When the first mouthful I had, and I know I'm going slightly pieced here, it reminded me of Stinking Bishop a touch. It's not full on of Stinking Bishop, which is probably a good thing. But the more I taste it, the more different to my memory of Stinking Bishop it is.
Yeah, the Stinking Bishop is kind of, I think it's a bit fruitier. But that partly, then Stingy Bishop is washed in Perry, which is, the pear cider.
Yeah.
Which is where the name for that cheese comes from. But the variety of pear is Stinking Bishop. So,
right.
Well, the cheese has got the name because it's quite stinky. But yeah, it's the pear variety that they use in the Perry, which gives the cheese its name.
Right.
But yeah, the same process. So that washing produces particular bacteria on the rind, which gives it that kind of orangey look. So anytime you see an orangey cheese like that, chances are orangey pinkiness, it's been washed in something. Which is something that the French have been doing for years and years and years, and it's coming in a lot more. Wash rind cheeses in Britain is definitely part of that kind of new wave of trend of British cheese production. There's been a lot of experimentation, and this is a really good example of that.
Wow.
You're jumping in with a wine as well. So have you gone white or red?
I've just gone for the white initially, and it's amazing.
Brilliant.
It's amazing.
We'll do this now. Oh yeah.
It just completely removes anything that's holding the fruit back from the wine. You get just bags of fruit coming through from that wine. It lifts the wine amazingly. That's a phenomenal combination.
Yeah, that really amplifies, doesn't it? Really amplifies the wine. Yeah, that's that perfect pairing because it just both components just get bigger and better and work in harmony. That's great.
So that wine disappeared quite quickly.
I'll just point out to everybody, this is a lunchtime recording we're doing here. So this is the hard way to spend lunchtime.
Yes.
Fabulous wine and trying it with great cheese.
Well, it's hard for us. It's harder for my poor son who saw the delivery come in and was, can we open it? No. Can I have some? No, you have to wait until I've recorded it and then you can. So because we're not back at school yet, he's upstairs in his room waiting for me to tell him that he can come down and try some cheese. Poor boy. Right, let's try the red then.
Not quite as good a pairing, I don't think.
No, I mean, it has a similar impact. That saltiness of the cheese is always going to be a friend to a wine and help lift the fruit in it.
Yeah, for sure.
But the moment I tasted the white, it was a wow. That wasn't a wow for me.
Wine and cheese heaven. I could see it on your face. It was written all over your face. You didn't have to say a word.
No. The red is this isn't so much of a friend to the red. It's not killing it. It's not something that's nasty. But compared to the white, it's
amplifying the acidity slightly for me as well, which is not necessarily the best. But
what I love about these cheeses is getting that mess on your fingers as well.
Yeah, I have. Don't know about you. I have neglected to bring a napkin or anything like that with me. So
yeah,
there's going to be lots of finger licking going on here, which is always a good thing.
But I'm going to have another sip of white to go with that, just to remind myself that's so good. Oh yeah.
So there we go. So winning pairing so far, having only done one.
I love it when we find stuff like that though, and it just takes you by surprise. I mean, I remember going back to the first week, and I can't remember which blue cheese it was we had, but the blue cheese and the aged Riesling.
Yeah,
it's just out of nowhere. It was a fantastic pairing.
I think it was the Buffalo Blue. We'll have to check back on the recordings, but yeah, that just, this is what this is my happy place, just with different wines and different cheeses almost. Just trying stuff. And we have some, and we've sort of talked about this before we record, and we sort of have some idea about where we want to go with styles. But for me, this is just the adventurous stuff. Well, yeah, let's just try things. the ideal, this is why I love doing it when we do tastings in the shop. We'll get people come in with some wine to try. So let's just see what goes with this. My friend who runs the local WSET up in Yorkshire, she'll just bring stuff in and say, I want to try something to go with this. And we'll just taste our way through the counter till we find the perfect match. And sometimes you hit it first time, sometimes it takes a few. Sometimes there's things that you think are going to go and on paper should work, that actually don't. But that's just the beauty of it. It's really going for it.
Actually, one comment I've just got now is with that cheese. Now I've finished it, and there's, because of the nature of it, it's clinging to your teeth a little bit.
Yeah.
It's this gorgeous little flavor. It's leaving quite a salty but musty kind of flavor that's left behind on your teeth. I think it's coming from the rind more than the body of the cheese itself.
Yeah, the rind kind of hangs around on your teeth and stuff like that, I found. So
it's quite pleasant.
Yeah, in a good way. Lovely stuff. Right then, let's look at our second cheese. So the second cheese is the Tomme de Brulee. So we are going to the Basque region, southern France. Look at the color on that on the outside. This cheese, as the name might suggest, the Brulee, they go at it with a blowtorch to singe the rind, which gives a bit of smokiness, a bit of sweetness. This is an unpasteurized sheep's milk cheese, which is aged for about 3 months.
Yeah.
And this is again a recent discovery to us. It's been around for a while in France, but one of my wholesalers who's very good at coming in, looking at my counter and spotting the gaps and saying, oh, you haven't got one of those or one of these. And she brought a sample of this in. And when we shared it with the rest of the team, it's like, this is really good. And it's different. It comes as about sort of little 800-gram cheese. So the whole cheese is probably about a quarter of a cheese there. Yeah. Maybe
you get the picture.
Yeah, an idea of the scale of it.
Yeah.
So really good one. If you've got, I don't know, 8 or 10 people around, that'd be a great cheese just to put on the table with a bottle of red. And I think this is going to go well better with the red than the white, and then just have a nice evening talking, drinking, and eating.
Right, let's test that theory. So one question I've got for you while I cut this cheese.
Yeah.
So you mentioned they blowtorch it.
Yeah.
At what point do they do that? Is that just before it's released, or is it earlier on in the maturation?
That's going to be, I think, fairly sort of late on in the process. I think that's a final finishing part of the process.
So give the rind a chance to form.
Yeah.
And then go for it with the flamethrower.
Yeah. If you blow lamp at the start, it'll just all mush.
Wow.
Just gives a bit of, the cheese is lovely, but it's quite mellow in the center, but towards the rind, you get that smoky sort of caramel. It's a caramelization, I suppose, isn't it?
It is. It's just it's the same as when you're making a creme brulee and you caramelize that sugar, you get that. You've got that. It's not burnt. It's not a burnt flavor. It is that caramelized flavor, that sort of soft sweetness.
Yeah.
I'm going to try just the middle without the rind, and then a bit of the rind itself.
Yeah, always worth doing. You get different flavors.
Yeah.
And this is why there's all the etiquette around when you're slicing cheese for guests or for sharing, is that you take some of the center and some of the rind rather than just taking the middle piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is so taking just the middle, it's what I'd expect from a Tomme. It's got that good salty, hard cheese that you'd expect it to be from those French styles like Tomme, and so on. Tomme slightly softer, a little creamier than say Beaufort. Let's try the rind, because I think the rind is the thing that makes this cheese. Because when I tasted it, it tastes like a Tomme, but there's something else going on, and I think it is that rind. Yeah, so the rind's quite compared to, I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time I had a Tomme, but yeah, the rine's got a lot more to it than normal. It's actually slightly tougher than normal, which probably reflects that it's been abused. There's still quite a mustiness to it that hasn't been blown away by the flames.
Yeah,
but that slight caramelization that comes with it as well. And look, if I bring this up, you can see it on the edge here. You can see it looking slightly burnt, especially around the top here and around the bottom. So let's go. I'm going to take this little corner because it looks really burnt. Oh yeah. So where it's been
real different flavors.
It's harder, even harder. Still no ashiness.
There's clearly some skill there in that singeing process. They're not just got some kid with a blowtorch just blasting them.
No, I can imagine if you gave it to my children, you'd have a black cheese.
Yeah, very quickly.
Right then, let's see where we go. That's really interesting. It has that's with the white wine. It's making it taste more acidic than it tastes by itself. So it's almost like the opposite effect of the Evenlode.
Yeah, it's actually sharpening the wine up, isn't it, rather than softening?
Yeah, it is. Fruit's still there, but whereas the Evenlode seems to almost strip away that remaining acid. Not unpleasant.
No, my sort of overall feel with that, if it doesn't splash more, is that the two they sort of sit quite nicely together. It's not an earth-shattering pairing like we had with Evenlode earlier. They're not. It's not clashing, which is not a bad thing.
And I think it's that creamy centre that's doing it to it. If I try it just the rind, what happens? Yeah, it is. With just the rind, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that impact of highlighting the acid in the wine. It sort of stops having so much effect on the wine at all. So it's the creamy centre that's doing that to it.
I agree.
It's not unpleasant, but it's not a wow the same way the Evenlode was. Right.
Let's try with a bit of the red.
Let's go the other direction now then.
At some point we get to do a best of where we have the best of the pairings. But that's going to involve a lot of bottles of wine being opened at the same time.
Right, if we're doing that, Stephen, that's a very good idea. We need to do that as a group event. Otherwise, you and I are going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yes. Could be a very messy afternoon.
Right. Let's try it. Another one. Yeah, so that's so I've got a habit of drinking red wines with some hard cheeses at home, and that's just classic, really, isn't it? It's the red wine is helping emphasize that creaminess of the center of the cheese immediately.
Yeah, definitely. The white wasn't doing anything much for the cheese, but the red is definitely
It's an odd one because it's almost the wrong way around. The wine is almost helping lift the cheese rather than the other way around.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the cheese is taking the lead, and the wine is having a supporting role, isn't it?
That's really surprised me because I think I've mentioned on prior shows that the impact of food on wine is bigger than the other way around. Which we saw very much so with the Evenlode and the white wine. Here it's the other way. It's the wine has had more of an impact on the cheese.
Definitely.
And pick out that lovely flavored center. In fact, I'm going to try just the center now with the cheese and see what happens.
Yeah, good. Wow.
Yeah, I like that. Now I'm going to try just a bit of rind. Yeah, so I think it's the center of the cheese and the wine that's going really well together. That surprised me. That really has surprised me.
That's good.
In a good way. One thing the cheese does do for the wine is the same as it did for the white, which is just to bring forward some of the acidity in the wine.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit more sharpness from it. Yeah, for sure.
Not overly acidic, this wine, and it just lifts the acidity slightly. Wonder how it's doing that.
We need to get a scientist involved in this, don't we? Give us some scientific explanations as to what's actually happening.
Yeah, science takes all the science. Sometimes, I know by background, my academic career was more focused on science than the arts. And I remember at one point at a tasting, someone was talking about how a phenomenal wine had been taken into the lab to understand the chemical composition of it. And then, having understood that chemical composition, scientists busily got their test tubes out and got the same chemicals and mixed them up again to see if they could recreate the wine scientifically, so without growing a grape or fermenting it, which they did. And they put it together, and apparently, I believe them, they put it together in exactly the right quantities to be able to replicate this wine. And yet it didn't taste anything like it. And so I don't know how to explain that. It makes no sense to me from a scientific view.
But it just shows that there's something about creating wine or cheese or whatever it is that defies science. And yeah, my background is has always been very sciencey as well, and I totally agree. There is just something that you can't quite. It's like a sixth sense, isn't it? I suppose you get around these things. But,
right, so that I'd definitely go for the red over the white with this, but that's partly me loving those red wine hard cheese combinations.
Yeah, that obviously, from what you've spoken about before, you've spent a lot of time in places like France, drinking French wine, drinking a French hard, the whole thing about what grows together goes together, and these parts of the world you're having those lovely hard French cheeses with these lovely red wines. They're natural bedfellows. They're going to work really well together.
They are, very much so. And this is, we've just got into September, the nights coming in. In that run into Christmas and also over the Christmas period, as I start to drink bigger, fuller red wines, and we start to get the cheese out as well. Yeah, this is the thing that I would be doing, is getting a selection of hard cheeses in my red wine on a Sunday night. and enjoying it. So this is one that I'm going to have to add to that list.
That's good. Yeah, no, we're big fans of the Sunday night cheese board in our house as well, especially as you say, you know, the cheeses will change in that they'll get bigger flavors, they'll get stronger, harder, and the wines definitely get heavier. I think, I don't know about down there in London today, but certainly here and up in Yorkshire, the weather, 1st of September, the weather's suddenly gone a bit autumnal. It's just gone that little bit cooler, a little bit more darker skies. Everything just feels a little bit more autumnal.
It's been like that for the week, unfortunately. The last week was school holiday. It's been I haven't seen much blue sky, put it like that. It's not been rain. It's just been high overcast cloud, dry, not so warm. When you saw the pictures of me at the Shard on Monday, wearing a jacket and so on, with Ayla wearing a coat in August.
Yeah, it's definitely the beginnings of an early autumn. Although it can all go well again in September, can't it? The weather can go.
It can. It can. Once the kids go back to school, it suddenly gets warmer.
That's it. Excellent. Right, cheese 3. Let's save the blue to the end. Let's go with our other French one, which is the Etivaz. This is proper Alpine. I mean, this is a small piece here, but it comes in a wheel that's about 25-30 kilos. Not quite as big as a content, but you get an idea from the label there, and it's the label on the whole cheese is a beautiful work of art as well.
Right.
This takes its name from the place where it's made, which is Etivaz in Switzerland. So it's sort of French-Swiss border type stuff. This is only made in summer months between May and October.
Okay. And how long does it mature for?
It matures for about 2 years.
2 years.
It's made.
Can you only buy it at certain times of the year if they really sit mature, or is it?
We get it all year round. They manage the process. So they actually make this in mountain chalets. They use the high mountain pastures that the cows. The guys that make this, Frederick and Irene, have got 24 cows, and they're up on the high pastures. The reason they only make it in the summer is because in the winter those pastures are covered in snow, so there's nowhere for the animals to graze. And they, I've seen a video of them producing this. I've not had the chance to get out there and actually see them making it. A big copper cauldron over an open fire. And we were talking before about, sort of the precision and the science around making some things. This is where there's very little science. They will be stirring the milk. They will sort of, he'll put his finger in to go, yeah, that's about the right temperature. That's how we want it to be. It's a real handmade cheese. There's a real intuition around making it, rather than measuring it with my going, okay, no, when we get to this temperature, we do this and we do that. There's a real old-fashioned intuitive cheese making process going on there. And it's beautiful. It's smoky, it's caramel, there's nuttiness there.
So you're telling me that
in style, I suppose, if you want to put a name on it.
So this cheese comes from 24 cows.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a very limited amount of this.
They make 2 wheels a day.
2 wheels a day. So not so much to go around then.
No.
Now this is,
and it attracts a price tag which reflects that.
Yeah.
But the depth of flavour.
The
texture, the graininess, the grittiness there, just beautiful stuff. Yeah,
and this is for as hard cheeses go, this is right up my street. One question: you mentioned the label was a work of art, and now you've trained me and taught me that I should eat the rind as well. Are the labels edible generally, or do they need to be peeled off?
They're paper, so they're not going to come. You're not going to come to any harm if you were to eat the label. But it just peels off quite easily. That.
Yeah. So
it's not going to.
Yeah. So I've just managed to peel that off, so that's fine. But the first bit I cut, it seems to be pretty stuck on, which is what I was asking. But wow, this is I love salty hard cheeses. you know, where you can taste that it's matured and the salt is starting to crystallize. There's a few salt crystals in there. They're almost crunchy.
Yeah.
The flavor is huge.
It's so savory. It defies description in some ways.
Yeah, it's a very strong flavor. I mean, you could put anything on that, the strongest chutney you like, and you're still going to be able to taste the cheese. Yeah. With it being so savory, I'd be tempted to just put a little bit of honey on it. Taste it.
It's really good. I mean, you need that intense sweetness. It's really good with like a Pedro Jimenez sherry. The sort of real syrupy, raisiny sherries that you get in Spain. But yeah, honey.
You're almost at Christmas when you mentioned PX.
Yeah. Well, it's not far away.
It's less than 4 months now. Yeah, that's PX is Pedro Jimenez is liquid Christmas pudding for me.
Yeah, so good.
That is awesome. I like that cheese.
It's really good. I'm glad you like it. I had a feeling that you would.
No, I mean, I like cheese just generally, but there's something about a good, really salty, really good mature hard cheese that I'm drawn to naturally.
Definitely, these Alpine styles are just wonderful.
Yeah. So, and you said it was matured for 2 years, is that right?
2 years or so, yeah.
You can see that in the color and how hard it is. Right, time to try with a bit of wine.
Yeah.
Now I'm expecting this one to be a friend for the red, but let's see.
Yeah,
let's see how the white
goes with the white.
So yeah, that's with the white. It's not unpleasant, but it's not really doing anything.
Not doing anything much, is it?
No. There's
I think we need to switch it over to the red.
In fact, the white kind of hides behind the cheese. You don't. It's not doing anything. It's not making the wine taste unpleasant, but the wine's almost the cheese is too strong for the wine, so the wine is a little bit behind it. If it was a more of a shrinking violet of a white wine, it would completely disappear. But because it's got a little bit more, it's fuller bodied, quite a bit of fruit in it. Yeah, you'll taste it, but it's not being a fruit.
I think as a result, it makes the cheese, it kind of hides the cheese a bit as well. I think you lose something in the power of the cheese with the white.
Let's try this. Let's try this with the red. Yeah. Right, here we go. Yeah, so that reminds me of my Sunday evenings heading into Christmas, or heading towards Christmas, drinking bigger, progressively bigger wines. There's something just quite natural about it.
Yeah, they just sit together really well, don't they? I'm getting amplified flavors from the wine. I'm getting more creaminess from the cheese.
Yeah, it slightly softens the cheese, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But I'm finding it's picking out some of those savoury notes in the cheese as well. Like little highlights popping up all over my mouth.
Not that the cheese needed softening; it just brings out different flavours from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, together it makes the cheese feel a little bit creamier in your mouth.
Yeah.
With the wine, I think that saltiness is helping to bring forward some of the fruit in the wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're sitting together quite naturally, quite nicely, as I'd expect. Can't wait for it to get autumnal and me to start doing more of this.
Yeah. Well, we may well we may well bring this cheese back in a future episode, especially if we get nearer to Christmas.
Yeah, I can think of I can definitely think of some other wines that I'm going to start thinking about drinking as we get towards as it gets colder, gets colder, that I'd like to try this cheese with.
Yeah, and you just know that that's a cheese that can actually, that'll stand up to most things that in terms of red, in terms of depth of flavor that you want to throw at it.
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not going to shy away.
There's definitely some bigger wines that you could throw at this.
Yeah, I can imagine that for sure.
So here's another question: with the level of production that they have, so 2 wheels of cheese a day through the summer months, how hard is it for you to, what? I would imagine that most of the wine stays in. Oh, sorry, most of the cheese stays in France. How hard is it to get hold of?
Yeah, most of the time we're okay. I mean, it's not one that we don't sell huge amounts of it because it's an expensive cheese. However, when it's certainly around to Christmas, we ordered. I think we had two wheels that we sold through on the Christmas week, fairly easily. So it's it's. I think as well, it's one of those. For you and me, this is one of those things where we really enjoy the flavors of it. It's not for everyone. For a lot of people, it's too strong. And it always sort of makes me smile. The more a customer comes into our shop, the more they say, I like strong flavor cheese, I like big flavors. I just know that when I hit them with a sample of that, they're going to go, oh no, that's too strong. It's bizarre, but that's just what I found in my experience of doing this for a number of years, is that the more people protest about how much they like strong flavors, actually the more they like fairly middle of the road flavors. Right. And it's more the people who come in who will either know about it because they've tried it and ask for it by name, or they will describe they want something alpine and strong and nutty. And we might sort of work them up through Comtés and things up to there. And then they'll go, yeah, that hits the spot. That's what I need.
Yeah.
So it's one that, and if that's reflected in a wider, the wider market, then yes, the production's fairly small, but it's going to people that really appreciate it.
Yes,
I'm sure is exactly what they would want anyway. It's not necessarily going to go. I mean, this is beautiful in a sandwich, but it's not necessarily going to go in a sandwich or sort of into a toasty. But
that would be quite an extravagant toasty.
It would be a really, really good toasty. So
yeah.
But you can imagine if you're making fondue, just maybe sort of 50 grams or so of that in there with other cheeses is just going to give that extra depth of flavor.
I hadn't even thought of that. That's a great, absolutely. I don't know why it's never occurred to me before. I just assumed with a fondue, you're chucking in a load of, I don't know, raclette or whatever else you make it. It didn't occur to me that you could put in some other cheeses just to lift it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's the trick, is that, for volume, you're going to want something like an Emmental or a raclette, but then just to give a bit of extra oomph, you throw a bit of that in.
Yes.
And you're just going to get an extra little level on the flavors.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I've had lots of different Alpine cheeses from spending time in the mountains, and this is definitely an Alpine cheese, but it's I think it's leading the way. This is what you can do if you really want to.
The business.
Yeah.
So we've got to try and top that now with our final cheese, which is back to the UK. And this is Leeds Blue. This is a Yorkshire blue cheese.
It's definitely blue.
Yeah, it's definitely blue.
And when I showed it to my son, this was, I don't think he's quite got to blue cheeses yet. I got why did you have to get a blue cheese? I was like, I didn't pick it. Stephen sent it to me.
So this is made not far from Leeds now. It's made by a Sardinian guy called Mario, who I've known about as long as I've been cheesemonging, he's been cheese making.
Yeah.
And he started making cheese as a bit of a sibling rival with his brother, who had made some cheese and took it home one year, and they all tried it, and Mario tried it, said that's all right, but I can make better. Mario's a chef by sort of trade and background, but his family in Sardinia, whenever he goes home, he's not been home this year because of COVID, but they're out. His father is out fishing every morning, and they're just making food, making cheese, enjoying that whole sort of Mediterranean lifestyle.
Yes.
That simplicity, that connection with nature and with the world. And Mario started making cheese as a sort of sideline to the stuff he was doing around doing supper clubs, and he was doing farmers markets, selling all sorts of things, making bread and pastries. He makes the most amazing cannoli, and Italian donuts that are filled with either ricotta or Nutella, which are the size of your fist, and you can almost get a coronary by looking at them, but they're so good. Yeah. Over the last 7 or 8 years or so, he's increased focus on his cheeses, and he recently moved to he was making cheese in his kitchen to start with at home, turned half the downstairs of his house into a more of a commercial grade cheese production facility. He's now got a dedicated dairy in Otley, which is a few miles outside of Leeds. I was there a week or two ago helping him make cheese, and actually was helping him to make Leeds Blue. Was
this the photo you put? I saw with you and Jane making cheese together.
Yes, yeah, we took a trip there. We spent you could call it a date day, I suppose. We spent a wonderful morning learning about his cheese and helping him to make it, which was the best way to understand it. But the same with winemaking. The best way to understand it is to actually just get involved. And it was just really, really good fun. He's such an engaging chap, and he always welcomes an extra pair of hands with cheese making, as most cheesemakers do. I find if you ring up a cheesemaker or knock on the door and say, "Can I have a look at how you make cheese?" they're always happy to get an extra pair of hands in, because it's hard physical work.
Yeah.
But really good fun. And the nice thing with it is that there's time where you have to let things sit and rest. So there's time for a chat, there's time for a coffee, and it's a very sociable thing to do. So this is his kind of his signature blue cheese, which is made with sheep's milk. And it's similar, it's a pecorino style cheese. This is the Sardinian element coming in through here.
Yeah.
And pecorino covers a huge, a bit like Tomme in France. Pecorino covers a huge range of styles, right through from soft, mild cheeses through to really hard. Think of the pecorino sardos, the pecorino romanos, which are really sort of salty parmesan-y style cheeses. Pecorino just means it's made with sheep's milk. So quite literally of sheep. And this blue is sort of similar to a gorgonzola. It's gentle, it's aged for about 30 days. There's sort of a bit of savoriness there, there's a touch of sweetness. And I think this is going to pair up quite nicely with these wines. So
30 days. I don't know why. I always imagined that for blue cheeses, they were aged for a long time to allow that mold, the blue mold to develop. But 30 days, it doesn't sound like it is.
No, I mean, 6 to 8 weeks is kind of the average sort of time for a blue to get. Nice. I mean, things have been matured on for a bit longer for sure.
Yeah.
But there is a bit of a sweet spot with blue cheeses where if you have them too young, they're going to taste quite metallic and quite sharp. If you have them too late, then they're just not going to taste very nice at all. There's a sort of window of opportunity with them where you get the combination of savory and sweetness in there.
Right. So as I was tasting it, and you mentioned it was, a pecorino, so it was a sheep's cheese. And I know I've been to Italy a lot, including Sardinia, and I know you get pecorino everywhere. But the moment you mentioned that, I don't know if it's the power of suggestion or not, but it does have a pecorino background to it.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely got an Italian flavour of pecorino, but with a great big blue element running through it. And I've never seen a blue pecorino before.
There you go. It's really nice cheese.
Yeah, it is. Now, in our house, on the blue front, we love blue cheeses almost as much as I love hard cheeses. And this one, this is just having tasted it, it's great. But it reminds me a little bit of some absolutely fabulous Stiltons that I've had. And I know that's probably going to be a dirty word to your Italian friend, but it's not a big salty Roquefort that's gooey and oozing all over the place.
No.
It's more about the background flavour of the cheese and the blue mould in it, in the same way as Stilton is.
Yeah, it's a bit more subtle, isn't it? And it's quite a good one. We get a lot of people coming into the shop saying, don't like blue cheese, because they've had something like Danish blue or Roquefort, which is very strong, very salty, and it's kind of put them off. Whereas this is more the sort of gentler, creamier end of things.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's it's not salty at all, and that creaminess is particularly in the centre of the cheese. It's a little bit like the Tomme earlier. The Tomme has got a lovely creamy centre. So has this. It's all, you can feel the fat on your tongue as it sort of dissolves almost.
Yeah,
which you don't get from a Roquefort.
One of the things I like about what Mario's done is his recipes are always evolving. And he took some time a year or two ago to actually go back to Italy, and he went and spent some time at one of the Gorgonzola factories. So he learned about the Gorgonzola production. And then he took that into his own cheese making. Yeah. And the result is that, he's changed his recipe, and the result is a creamier blue than it was. If you tried this cheese 2 or 3 years ago, it would have been a bit firmer through the center. So, there's a real evolution there.
So this is, sorry, I have a question. So this is Mario's cheese. What was his brother called?
I don't know the name of his brother, but
right.
What I do know.
You don't have any of his cheese.
Sorry?
You don't have any of his brother's cheese in the shop?
No, I think his brother just made it as a bit of a one-off.
Okay. I had this vision of these guys being like the Gallaghers of cheese making.
No, I think maybe Mario's slightly more competitive of the two, because I know what I do know is every time he wins an award for any of his cheeses, he takes a photo of it and sends it to his brother just to wind it up.
So he is the Liam Gallagher of cheese making.
Yeah, he is the Liam of it, definitely. Mario is, I think it's part of that Italian passion for life and everything. He is very, very serious and committed and competitive. If he enters his cheese for awards and he doesn't win, he's coming into my place and saying, "Oh, can he buy the competition? Can he try what beats him, so he can learn what it was in the cheese that won that his cheese doesn't have?" And sometimes he'll try and go, "Well, everything's subjective."
Yeah,
as good as his, but he's so passionate about doing the best that he can, which is absolutely, I think that's all you can ask for in food and drink production, is to, he's always making sure every cheese is the best he can possibly do. And it's an expression of him as well. I know that sounds a bit flowery, a bit naff, but anyway, let's try it with the wine.
I'm glad you said that, because I've just tried it with the white. And it surprised me. So let's see what you think of this in the white, because it's for me it's highlighting elements of the white that I didn't expect it to. It's bringing in a lot of the background flavors. So
yeah, it's taken off some of the foreground flavors there, and kind of mixing them up a bit.
Yeah, there's quite a lot. It's the flavors that didn't hit you when you drank the wine by itself. And I got that wave of apricot coming through, followed by some secondary flavors coming through after that. Things the winemaker had done. I can taste those things that the winemaker's done much more with this cheese. The wine's covering the fruit, and it's allowing that kind of that structure behind it to come through.
Yeah. And again, I'm finding it's giving the cheese a little bit more creaminess, but the cheese is definitely pushing the wine up to greater things. That's a really nice combination, actually.
That surprised me. That has surprised me.
A lot of people sort of instantly think of red with blue.
I don't think red's. So I'm going to be interested to see what the red does with the blue.
Yeah, I have a feeling.
I'm not a fan of reds and blue cheese.
Yeah, I think the red's not going to go so well. But
no.
Let's find out.
I think because my usual angle for cheeses is other than hard cheeses, which are definitely friends of red, most cheeses go better with whites for me. Like, there are exceptions, but this has surprised me. And it's almost like the opposite of the Evenlode. The cheeses are doing opposite things to the wine.
Yeah.
Right, let's try that red then.
Red.
Right, a bit of cheese and a bit of red. Right. So first thing, it's not offensive. It's not something where I'm sitting there going, I wouldn't do that. But I think it's flattening the red, which is a slightly odd phrase.
Yeah. The cheese is flattening the red, but also the red is kind of, the cheese is kind of getting a bit lost in the mix as well.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. You can't really taste either, can you?
No.
No.
It's kind of just, they're both kind of just negating each other, really.
Yeah.
Which, to say that on their own, they both taste so amazing, doesn't make for a good pair.
No, that's not. I mean, if you were if someone was putting it in front of you, you would eat them both and go, that's okay, but just okay, right? It's not going to blow you away. But no. Yes, the cheese by itself is stronger. The wine by itself is stronger. They're not adding to each other; they're taking away. That's a good way of putting it. I like that.
Yeah, I definitely think of the two wines, the white definitely harmonizes with the blue more. I would agree with your statement before about white wines with blue cheeses.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, still the one that surprised me was going back to the first week, and was it the Buffalo Blue?
Buffalo Blue, yeah.
Buffalo Blue, and the Riesling. Because also blue cheeses with white wines, yes, but also blue cheeses with sweeter white wines. And that wine wasn't sweet, but it had some honey overtones on it. And it brought all those honey overtones out. And this cheese I would love to taste with that wine, which is a shame because I don't have any of that wine left. But you know, the absolute classic is Roquefort and sweet wines. So either Sauternes from France or God, why can't I remember what they're called? Tokais from Hungary. I mean, those are absolute classics. This cheese is starting, I would be wanting to think about sweeter wines with and see how it went.
I think so. I think we get to bring this one back.
We do.
With something sweeter near Christmas. Possibly.
And I've got an idea there as well, because I've got a wine that I'm thinking about, which is not super sweet like a Sauterne or a Tokai, but it's sweet. It's not quite a dessert wine, but it's only just off that sweetness. I think it will go with a range of blue cheeses. So maybe we can do that with a range of blue cheeses one.
I think I'm really loving that idea, just doing it with a range of blues.
Yeah. So that has to be, sorry viewers, we're now planning our next tasting or our future tasting, but perhaps we could do that to a range of blues, shelve the reds for that day and get a couple of interesting whites of differing sweetnesses and see how they work.
That's a great idea. If anyone wants to drop into the comments on this of any suggestions they have, then we'll take those on board as well.
Yeah. Any wines or cheeses you want to see in that mix, we'll read Absolutely. Your comments and then ignore them in the order they were received.
Great stuff. So I think we've got a winning pairing today, which seemed to be the Evenlode with the white, which is the first one we did. So it took some.
I would say that. Absolutely, that blew me away. I was not expecting that at all.
That's great.
Yeah. There we go.
Red with the Tomme Brulee, and I think that last Leeds Blue with the white as well was a really nice. I'm just quite happily munching away on what's left of that. This is so good. Yeah. So
yeah. No, so it's definitely for me, the Evenlode and the white was the standout. It surprised me. I wasn't expecting that at all, and it was gorgeous.
Yeah, I agree. Totally.
The white again, the Saint-Peray with the Leeds Blue, good combination there as well. And as expected, the harder cheeses with the reds was a good combination. But that first pair was just one of those that came out of nowhere and took my breath away.
Brilliant. This is what I love about doing this. It's just finding those pairings that just defy imagination, defy description.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Great.
So there we go. There's episode 3. So I hope everyone's enjoyed that. Look out those cheeses and wines and try for yourself and let us know what you think about them.
Great.
This is an open conversation. There are no right or wrong answers.
No. Great. Thanks everyone. I hope
episode 4. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll see you for episode 4.
Great stuff. See you all
soon.
Cheers.